All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the special meeting on April 23rd, 2024 of the Cathedral City Planning Commission. May I kindly ask for a roll call, please?
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Vice Chair Malikoff?
Here.
Chair Daley?
Present?
Commissioner Lee?
Present.
Let the record show that Commissioner Lowe is absent.
Thank you. Moving on to the flag salute, I'd like to invite everyone on the dais and in the audience to please stand. Can I get a play ball?
Popcorn. I don't know if you say that for basketball.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the confirmation of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Okay. We're moving. Okay. Item 1 is public comments. The public is invited to address the Planning Commission on any matter not on the agenda. If you wish to speak on an agenda item, please wait to be recognized under that item. Except for special circumstances, the Brown Act prohibits the Planning Commission or staff from responding or taking action on any comments made by the public unless it pertains to an item that appears on the agenda. All speakers should give their name and city of residence. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone who would like to address the commission on a matter not on the agenda?
We have no one in the audience wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'll close public comments and move on to non-public hearing item 2A.
Good evening, Planning Commission. As indicated by the Chairman, this is a discussion item on a proposed specific plan amendment. And this is a discussion item. This evening, we're not asking for any action on this, any decisions, but we are certainly looking for input. The applicant is present along with representatives of key team members, and they're available also to provide comments. If needed, they also have a short presentation. So the Rio Vista specific plan area, also referred to as the Verano specific plan amendment area, was adopted in 1998. And the specific plan allows for up to 1,362 residential dwelling units to be constructed. It also provides for a small component of commercial development, and also includes infrastructure and facilities. The amendment, or I should say the specific plan, was also amended back in 2016 and 2017. As indicated, amendments typically were done to accommodate development that was proposed at that time. I have an echo. Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is a current amendment proposed by the applicants, and we're referring to it as the 2024 amendment. There's also associated applications for tentative track maps for the build-out of the remainder of the vacant portions that are designated residential, the areas on the west portion of the specific plan, and the area on the northeast. It's shown on this map in the light blue area. Those applications will be scheduled for public hearing. Agenda is currently a notice for May 1st. But that's to provide some background. We're not really going to have a discussion about those applications just yet. We'll do it with the public hearing. So the proposed specific plan amendment, this was in the staff report, does propose to amend the specific plan in different areas. When we were working with the applicant to amend the specific plan, one of the things we noticed is that the specific plan, even though it was amended back in 2016 and 2017, those changes were not reflected in the specific plan. So we did make sure that, even though it was adopted and it was an ordinance, we just wanted to make sure we had a comprehensive document. And so those changes were made. They're not shown in strikeout because they are existing. But in also updating the specific plan, we wanted to try to make some edits to make it more current, to reflect current conditions, but at the same time, we were trying to balance those changes in light that it is a 1998 document. And so although the specific plan document does have a lot of red line and strikeout, as you go through the document, or as we go through the document, the changes that are really germane to the development is really just a small component of what's being shown as red line and strikeouts. But these are from the staff report again, what's being amended, establish development standards for single family and multifamily associated with the current applications, the standards to address contemporary home and lot configurations. There's also a proposal for a density transfer. We'll talk about this more a little bit in the presentation. There's some amendments to the landscape plan, circulation plan, the recreational area, and also there was some amendments, or excuse me, updates and analysis regarding the environmental that was done in support of the specific plan. So one of the amendments has to do with the land use. And so in the specific plan, you'll see this exhibit, which is the planning areas for the specific plan area. The area in brown on the very right-hand side, that's the multifamily designations. In yellow is the single-family designations. And right in the middle here, a little bit darker in the yellow, one of the amendments that is being made is these planning areas or sub-planning areas in the original specific plan were designated for minimum lot sizes of 8,000 square feet. But in the specific plan area, you don't see that lot size anywhere else. And so to be consistent with the prevailing lot pattern and to accommodate the future development, one of the components of the amendment is to change this to a R5000, which is a 5,000 square foot lot, and then this one portion here to a R6, which allows for 6,000 square foot lots. And so that's a change, but we see that as something that's very much supportable given the prevailing lot pattern. With regard to land use, so there is a new section that's being proposed, section 5.9. It pertains to the 2024 development applications. It establishes tables that identify the standards for both the single family component and the multifamily component. And those were provided in the staff report. Even though they're in the document, they were also pulled out as attachments to the staff report, attachment 2AB and 2AC, which provides those standards, and 2AD. There's also a component in the land use that is a density transfer. The specific plan does allow for density transfers, and there's only a very small transfer being requested in planning area 5. I'll go back up. So in planning area 5, which is this column here, 11 units are being proposed to be transferred from 5.1 to two other planning areas. And so that planning area evens out with respect to the density that was anticipated. And in area 6, which is this bottom half here, there's also some density transfers that's identified in exhibit 2AB. Again, it's just about 12 units that's being transferred from one planning area to a couple of other ones. The specific plan accounted for density transfers so long as the maximum number of dwelling units that was approved under the specific plan, which is 1,362, that doesn't change, and it's not changing. That number is not being exceeded. You may hear me reference that maximum unit count a couple of times this evening and in subsequent hearings, only because it's one of the very important components of this is that we don't exceed what was anticipated under the specific plan and environmental document that was done back in 1998. Circulation, there's also some amendments to the circulation plan. One of the amendments is to extend, I'll go back to this map because it's probably one of the better ones to show. So the circulation plan is being changed. One, to extend Ventura Road, which is here on the southwest corner, just south of Verona, is Ventura Drive. And so that's going to be extended northward into the specific plan area. This was a request of the city to provide another access point onto Verona Road, and so that's something that we're also in support of. The other item that's proposed as a change to the circulation plan, under the original specific plan, there was a traffic signal identified at the intersection of Rio Vista Drive and Landau. However, there was a traffic signal warrant that was conducted, and that's going under the final stages of review, but that study is supporting that the traffic signal is not warranted, and so that's proposed to be eliminated as well. The open space plan, which identified parks, the drainage area, and also the master plan, showed a master community improvements, and then also had designated a city park. And so the changes that are being done with respect to that particular exhibit is eliminating the city park, which was intended to be a beach and was referred to as a water park with beaches, which is probably not feasible. It hasn't been constructed. We don't anticipate that to be constructed. So that designation is being amended in the specific plan. It's proposed to be a community facility, basically an extension of what's currently out there now. There is some revision to the phasing plan. When the specific plan was originally adopted, it was anticipated to be developed in 3 phases. However, it was also intended to be developed within a shorter time frame, but market conditions being what they were in the past, the project hasn't fully built out yet. And so that phasing plan's been changed to reflect not only the original phasing, but also the anticipated phasing to finish out the development project. The other change you'll see in the specific plan is that the environmental mitigation measures that were incorporated into the specific plan are proposed to be updated based upon a CEQA consistency analysis that was done for the project, which we'll discuss further during the public hearing process. But those are changes that were also made. And so those are the bulk and probably major changes to the specific plan. As indicated, the document does appear to be very lengthy. We can go over any particular standards that the commission may want to go through. In particular, again, that section 5.9, which establishes revised standards with regard to setbacks, front yard, rear yard, alley loaded, revisions to the requirement for alley loaded single-family detached lots. That's changed as well, and we're happy to go through any of that if the commission has any questions.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, and then I'll hand it off to my far more knowledgeable colleagues. First of all, I think you mentioned that the original plan called for 1,362 homes. Where are we at now?
We are at 470 built homes, 58 multifamily units that were approved and are going to be coming into plan check. Yeah, that's where we're at.
And let us assume for a second that these changes are approved, there's some development. Are we going to hit this 1,362 number?
So the associated tentative track maps that are currently under review do anticipate up to the 459 single-family lots and up to 375 multifamily lots.
Oh.
So that would be at the 1362.
It would be. Okay, got it. And then my other question, I just want to clarify because I clearly misread. The water park concept is no more. That's not what we're adding, we're getting rid of that.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Vice Chair Malakoff, any questions?
Is there a landscape palette somewhere?
There might be one in the specific plan document.
I can wait and ask the landscape architect,
Okay,
because I have a couple tree questions.
okay.
And then also, how, blow sand, do we know more? I mean, I don't think we know more than we did in 1997. Did we just change how we manage it in 2024?
So the environmental consultant for the applicant is present this evening, and there was an entire analysis that was done for the CEQA consistency finding, and they can provide more information.
So in addition to the landscape architect, there's a blow sand person here.
Yeah, the environmental consultant. Mhm. So,
I love the job title, blow sand person. That's good. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Chair. Couple of areas that I want to discuss or talk about. Number one is the trees, like fellow Commissioner Malakoff mentioned. I gave your colleague a one-sheet summary of an 8-year study that was concluded last year by the University of California Agricultural and Natural Resources and the U.S. Forest Service on climate-ready trees across Southern California. And there have been 5 to 6 that have been identified as good candidates to be considered for our area. So I just wanted to put that into the pot. I'm not asking the candidate to say which ones they're going to use. It's just more information for their toolbox. Question, after the experience of Tropical Storm Hillary with the mud flow and the water flow at north end of Date Palm, this is just a quarter mile, half a mile down from where that atrocity happened. Do we know what the water flow patterns were during that incident? And do any of them affect this construction or project areas?
I'll answer that question.
yeah, I'm just going to defer that to
Okay, Commissioner. Actually, that area got bypassed because the mud flows got stopped and impeded at the railroad trestles and then followed I-10 between I-10 and the railroad tracks, Union Pacific, all the way to Date Palm, where it continued going along the freeway, but it also broke south, hard right, or a hard south turn, hard right turn there into that neighborhood. That followed, once it got in that neighborhood, once it crossed Date Palm, it was in the normal floodplain that it should have been. Most of this project is in a zone AO, which is an unidentified base flood elevation, and we're working with their engineers to come up with that, because a lot of this project will be required to get a Clomar or a Clomar F, which ultimately is a Lomar F, for habitable structures. So there is some portions of the track that's in a shaded zone X, which is you don't need flood insurance, but there are portions that are in it too. So they're going through that. So when it goes to entitlement, those will be addressed in the entitlement documents. This document doesn't necessarily address that, because that really is an entitlement matter versus the specific plan information that you see here.
Right. Thank you. That answers most of my.
There's a lot of information.
Yeah. I do have one point. What is a detention basin versus a retention basin?
Other than one retains and one detains, I'll defer to Sean Corolla there.
Theoretically, we kind of intermingle them here in the desert. Oop, apologize. We intermingle these in the desert. But if you go into coastal areas where they actually have specific purposes, a retention basin is where they're retaining the water and they're allowing it to percolate in. That's something we do here in the desert. A detention basin is that they're holding it and it'll slowly flow out to another mitigation, best managed practice mitigation type measure.
So this project does have some
project
detention
has-
basin areas?
Retention basins that'll infiltrate water and great questions, because we had discussions with the applicant regarding the fact that the retention basins seem undersized with the change in climate and our ordinance from when this passed years ago, and those things can't be grandfathered. Obviously, Mother Nature doesn't care if it was 20 years ago that you had a lower standard. So they're actually working in their plans to determine those numbers and be able to capture the volumes in the existing placed retention basins.
So do you anticipate it's going to grow larger than the 54 acre feet that was identified in the special plan?
It was, well, we're dealing with cubic feet with them in the calculations, and they're about half where they should be. So they are going to be short in their retention, but they already have identified that, and we're looking to use underground storage chambers too for that. So it won't affect the look. They're prepared to, in their calculations of this next week, if they have to lose a lot or expand an open space area, they might have to do that. So they're in earnest crunching numbers right now before we take the tentative, before you see the tentative map in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Again, great information. How does the ADU situation affect this project?
So ADUs under state law are permitted by right, and they don't count towards the density. So, primary dwelling units, maximum of 1,362. That doesn't include accessory dwelling units. We can't count them towards density.
And are ADUs mentioned in a special plan at all?
They are mentioned that they're permissible. The revision to it is that the specific plan originally had a lot of standards applied to ADUs, which you can't do anymore. You just have to fall back onto state law and local code.
Okay. Thank you. That's it, Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Lee?
Thank you. Sandra, I have a short list of questions. Some of them are questions, some of them are comments. I just want to get some information from you. And first, generally, I note a lot of the things now in the amended sections are marked as complete. Do we require to keep those items in this document? Is that for documentation, or could they just be deleted if they're already complete?
I don't think it hurts to keep them as complete. The original specific plan had them, all the mitigation measures in here, and I think it's a good tool for planning staff to be able to refer that as well. So I would recommend keeping it.
Okay. Going back to the numbers, this was kind of a high school math class for me with the 4.5 units per acre and so on. And I noted too, it seemed like we have 470 units built, and we started out with 302 acres for 1362 units, yeah. But it's mentioned in the document that only 275 acres are buildable. So was that taken into account? Is that areas that are being used for open space, or what is that?
303 acres is the full, just boundaries of the specific plan.
Right. but the 275 is what we're really working with to build units.
I see. I'd have to go back and look specifically as far as how density is calculated, whether it's net or gross, in the specific plan.
Okay, yeah.
But, yeah.
And then, so I think you said in answer to another question that the way we're going to get to the full 1362 units is through the use of density shift and multiple family housing. Is that correct? Because we only have 128 acres that we're looking at here, and we've only built 470 units so far. So I'm struggling with how we're going to do that.
So the multifamily component of the specific plan has density up to 24 units per acre. And it's made up of 2 parcels, and one parcel has a maximum density of up to 20 units per acre. But what's planned for that area under the specific plan, it would allow up to 375 units. And so the tentative track map that is going to be a condominium map that the commission will see will allow for up to the 375 multifamily units.
Okay, all right. So I won't quiz you on the other 2 sheets at the back, which is all those numbers, but maybe I'll ask you about them separately.
Sure.
'Cause, yeah. You covered second dwelling units. It mentions and the page numbers I'm using are from the packet,
Okay.
but page number 23 mentions the commercial and institutional facility, and there's a definition of what that is on page 69, but I'm wondering, where is that going to be?
On this,
Oh,
on the
there we go.
slide here, there's
Yeah.
this, just above the multifamily, this small portion here is designated for commercial.
Okay, and is that, there is also mention of a potential market or grocery store. Would that be included in that area?
That would be permissible in this district.
Okay. Are there any actual plans for that area yet, or is that just a concept?
There's no plans for it.
Okay. And how would that be accessed?
Landell Boulevard would need to extend up. It's kind of hard to see in this map, but over on the east end, there's Landell Boulevard, and it does come up a certain distance, but to access this area,
Right.
there would still be,
So we'd extend
improvements.
Landau. Okay. And that's what, phase 5?
that would probably be a later phase, correct? Yep.
Okay. Again, the open space plan, I'm assuming that the changes, they all meet the requirements for Quimby in terms of using open space within the plan. Is that correct? Or are they giving any other land for public use?
So what happens is that with the Quimby, as every tender tract comes in, and as part of the final map process, there's an analysis done with respect to park that's provided to determine if the full Quimby fees are due or a portion of it, or if they've met that requirement. And past practice has been to look at it as the tract maps record.
Okay. I was just somewhat amused at page 38. There's a paragraph there which waxes lyrically about front yards, and I would advise deleting it because it's just wrong. And it says that front yards are uniquely American, which is going to be a surprise to Canadians, United Kingdom residents, European residents, and everywhere else. So I'd just get rid of that. The advantages of service lanes are listed, a number of advantages to service lanes, but what we're saying here is instead of requiring them, they're going to be an option. Is that correct?
Correct.
So why make that change?
You know, the applicant is, one of the questions that came up from Commissioner Malakoff earlier today was if the amendment was being market-driven. And it kind of is. The developer is proposing an amendment to the specific plan with standards that are best marketable for the project. So the applicant is getting the entitlements. The applicant may not be the builder. And so if there's other merchant builders that come in, these standards that are being put in place would make the project more marketable.
Okay. I was also a little bit surprised. I've driven around the area and just, tried to relate that to the plan. And one of the things in the plan, which is, it's actually on page 50, 4.5.7, it talks about bikes sharing the sidewalks. And I looked at the sidewalks, particularly on Rio Vista, and they're very narrow. So it seems like a bad idea to me. I would have thought we'd want to stripe some bike lanes, at least on Rio Vista, in order to keep the pedestrian traffic separate from the bikes. But that's a comment, it's not a requirement. Similarly, the neighborhood parks, I love the idea of pocket parks. I was on the Parks Commission. So I always encourage more small parks. But I was surprised that none of them have any shade trees or any other kind of shade structures and that I could see. And only two that I saw, although there might be others around, had any seating areas. So I'm hoping they'll look at that and improve on that. There's a little bit of confusion in some of the dimensions. In particular, usually our residential units are restricted in height to 26 feet, I believe. But here we have two different references, one to 40 feet and the other to 35 feet. And I wasn't quite sure why we were doing that or whether there was a difference. I couldn't detect what it was. References are page 79, 85, and 92. So again, that's something I think we could just look at and maybe tidy up if it's incorrect. Another thing was rear and roadside walls. The rear walls are listed as being at 60 inches. But driving around, certainly a lot of the walls that are either rear property or side property facing the road are certainly 72 inches. I didn't get out the car to measure, but they seem to be higher than 5 feet. And 72 inches seems to me an acceptable and sensible height in general. I think we allow that in most areas in the city. So again, if we could just review that. The water park. So, if I understand what it said in the original, was that the water park would be a community resource, and that would require shared development with other entities. So it wasn't just going to be developed it wasn't going to be just part of the Rio Vista plan. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, it was identified as a city park. However, the city park hasn't developed. The feasibility of the anticipated improvements is probably not reasonable. And I haven't seen, in my time that I've been here and the research I've done, I haven't seen that the city is actively looking to develop this site as a city park. I don't even think it was included in the last assessment that was done for the development impact fees.
So, are you saying that land would have been city land and not part of the Rio Vista village?
The way the specific plan reads, it refers to it as a city park.
Right.
Yeah. And so we don't anticipate in our discussions that the city's going to take that on as a city park.
Has that been discussed directly with City Council? Because one of the biggest issues for them every year are complaints about the lack of recreation facilities and a swimming pool. So I'm surprised if they knew about it and dropped it.
So this specific plan amendment will be going to the city council as well, but I understand the concern that you're raising. And I also looked at, there's a purchase and performance agreement that was entered into by the city and the developer. It was last amended, I believe, 2022 perhaps. And there's no mention about the city park in there as well. And so the applicant can probably speak more to that.
So from my recollection, when I first joined the Parks Commission, there was confusion because there was a belief within staff that Circle Park was actually a city park and it was open to the public. It isn't. It's gated and it's controlled by the HOA. So that may be the confusion. I think we should really look at that before just dismissing the availability of a city park. I mean, even if it just became a park and it doesn't have a water feature or whatever, it's still important that we are well below the national standard for city park lands in the city. Yeah, anyway, okay.
Commissioner Lee, can I respond to the comment about the heights?
Oh, sorry,
Because,
yeah.
no, it's okay. Because the original specific plan and the amendments that were done back in 1617 did provide for 35-foot height or 2 stories for the building heights. And so that's in keeping with what's been established in the past for single-family development. And so the 40 feet height for multifamily development is not inconsistent.
Oh, okay, all right. Are we not at 26 feet for a 2-story building now, or am I mistaken in that?
In the R1 zone, I believe, we'll look it up right now, but I thought it was a little higher than that.
Okay.
But I do tend to get
I didn't look it up either. It was from memory, so I may well be wrong.
And I tend to remember previous cities as well, so we'll verify that.
Were any of the cities 26 feet? No.
The ones I worked in now.
Okay. The other thing two other things I wanted to talk about. Had there been any discussion with the applicant on the availability of a density swap, for example, in order to secure affordable housing units with deed restrictions?
No, no. There hasn't been a real deep discussion about that. The applicant's present, though.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it would be interesting to see if they were interested in doing something along those lines.
Right.
Again, you know, so far we've only seen one development where they wanted to do that, but we really need that affordable housing.
We touched upon it, and like we've done with other developments for residential housing, and there's not always a desire to restrict the units in that fashion.
Okay. All right. And similarly, and this is a point I've raised with you previously, but it actually talks in the specific plan, excuse me, about there being multiple HOAs eventually, or the potential for multiple HOAs, and currently the master management organization would be the developer. And as you know, there's a problem with our short-term rental law now, because if there isn't a restriction initially, then once an HOA is established, they can't change that by law. So if units are sold but there's no HOA in force that's an owner HOA, then when the developer hands the HOA over to the owners, they're not able to change that. So all I would be asking is, would they consider a CCNR restriction initially, in the initial CCNRs, to restrict rentals or leasing to 31 days or more?
Commissioner, can I just clarify? So just so you know that, are you talking about the high-density residential that's in that top area, or the single-family residential?
No, single family.
Okay, so this isn't your conventional gated community, it's not gated. The
Right.
city actually maintains the streets from curb to curb. The HOA takes over after the curb. So we have a presence there, so it doesn't exactly fall into that, it's a gated HOA-run community.
Well, I think it does under the STVR restrictions in the ordinance, because if it's a CID, then the owners have CCNRs which can control in an HOA, irrespective of it being R1. Is that not true? I could be wrong.
I think it has to be gated, doesn't it?
We'll take a look at the,
I'm verifying this right now.
yeah, we're verifying the zoning, but short-term vacation rentals are allowed in our resort residential zone districts.
Right.
And this is not a resort residential zone district,
Oh, okay.
so
All right. I take it all back. Thank you.
it's okay.
That's all I had for you. Thank
That's
you.
an easier explanation, Sandra. But just to let you know, so for your information, yeah, we're going to end up accepting and maintaining the streets. The HOA, although we accept the alleys, the HOA will maintain the alley.
Right.
So there's a lot of nuances in this project that are way unique from other projects that we have in the city.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions for staff at this time? No? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I was hoping that somebody on the dais would save me from showing the fact that I missed. In your introductory comments, you talked about easement changes and overlay and so forth, right? That you had it and you would speak to it, and I didn't notice any changes in setbacks, and
I see. If you,
I think it was setbacks, actually.
I don't have an exhibit in my presentation. I know that the applicant did have some exhibits, but if you look at, in the specific plan document, there's a new section 5.9 that refers to the development standards for the new 2024 amendment area. And there's a table in there, and that table was also an attachment of what the setbacks would be for the single-family lots. That's in table 5.1. That was also an attachment that provides the setbacks with regard to the living space to the planning area boundary, setbacks from the front street, interior side yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks. Did you happen to find that exhibit?
When you gave the paragraph number, I looked at it. I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
In your comments, you made it sound like there were some changes or some adjustments being made.
Yes, in the sense that these standards are not, although not vastly different than the standards that would apply to, let's say, the development that was just completed over the last couple of years in the Rio Vista area. These setbacks are a little bit different. For instance, the interior side yard for the single-family lots of record is proposed to be 4. The standard for the ones that were just built is 5 feet. So they're not significant changes, but they're a little bit different. And in the specific plan document, there are some exhibits that are graphic depictions of what those setbacks would look like for single-family detached lots of record. There's also then the table for the standards that apply to the multifamily component. And again, there's also in the specific plan graphic depictions of what that would look like.
Okay. So, sounds like nothing significant, some changes and adjustments, but,
Yeah, there's changes and there's adjustments. There's a little bit of difference between the parking requirements, but they're not substantially different. And again, these are standards that make the project more marketable for development. And then we stay within the maximum unit count permissible in the specific plan.
okay. Thank you. This is simply out of curiosity. At what threshold does it change from a recommendation for a stop sign to a traffic signal?
I'll defer that to our Public Works Director.
There are certain warrants, such as number of pedestrians, and mind you, a city can put a signal if they wish to pay for a signal versus a stop sign. But you get into some legal ramifications there. But if you look at stop signs and say, okay, do we do a traffic signal warrant? Number of pedestrians, number of vehicles per day and during peak hours, morning and night. Any accidents there? Bicyclists, tickets in the area, speeds in the area, things like that. The best thing, I shouldn't say the best thing, it's the best worst thing for a warrant makes my job easier if someone gets in an accident at a traffic intersection. And if it's fatal, it actually automatically meets a warrant. So all it takes is one time to do that. So all these warrants are developed, here's a lesson in warrants. All these warrants are developed to, number one, prevent willy-nilly of putting stop signs and things up without a real reason. So it prevents, let's say, a politician from saying, oh, I want a stop sign right in front of my house so I can stop the cars, all that. It technically needs to meet warrants. And then what happens too, since California is a litigious state, as other states, if you put a stop sign up in a location that, a stop sign or a traffic signal or the conversion to a traffic signal, and it never met warrants, and someone goes in there and gets in an accident, and they can basically sue the people that put it in there and said, well, why'd you put this traffic signal in there? Did you put it because you wanted it in there or whatever? But I got in an accident because it doesn't need to be there.
And so at the entrance to this development where Landau,
There's a three-way intersection
Right.
there.
at this point, it does not warrant,
At this point, it does not meet warrants. I think the ultimate development had, I think that, well, the development's being pared down, as I recall, is because of just the water supply limitations, correct? On this. So there's, so it's limited at 1,300 and so number of units. But remember, there's other roads that people can leave there with. And they did the analysis and they did the peak hour study, morning and night, and it didn't meet the numbers. The other thing is, there hasn't been any accidents there. Hasn't been a fatal accident, but it can be accidents too. Hasn't been a whole lot of tickets written there either, so there's really no justification for the signal today. Now, later on, if things change and development around it occurred, that could be a different story, but the way the area is limited, our chances of getting a Landau extended over the freeway, which is in our general plan, going to basically multi-species habitat property, those are pretty slim too. So rather than have the developer necessarily be on the hook for something that probably when they build out and leave in 20 years, it may occur, but there's going to be, you can't keep the developer there waiting forever to put something in that's not necessary.
Right.
So,
So if the commercial development goes along that thin strip to the northeast, that might create more traffic, which might at some point warrant.
yeah, and that commercial is envisioned to be kind of like what you see out in, near the Bermuda Dunes area along the freeway there, Avenue 42.
Just a single strip.
It's more industrial type of, I don't see like restaurants and things like that going in that area. I don't even think it's zoned that kind of commercial, but the only really commercial would be at that intersection of Verano and Verona, Landau and Verona. That's where that warrant was basically intended for a signal there, and they basically did the warrant analysis. So we're asking them to clean it up because we got to straight face it, and then it'll probably go away because we can't justify it. Nor can we put the developer on the hook for it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Let's move on.
If I can, I just want to respond to a couple of the questions that came up that I didn't have immediate answers to. So the R1 zone district height is 26 feet, and both Commissioner Lee and Staff Member Molina are correct in their read of the code. Short-term vacation rentals are permitted in common interest developments, as Commissioner Lee said, although the resort residential zone district is the only one that allows short-term vacation rentals as a principal permitted use. So the zoning of this site would not permit the short-term vacation rentals. So I think we can set that issue aside. Also took a quick glance at our Parks and Recreation element to look at parkland designation for future parks, and this site is not identified in the general plan Park and Recreation element.
Okay, thank you. All right, I understand the applicant is present. We have several folks from the applicant. Would somebody like to come chat with us? Sure. Thank you.
Good evening.
Please state your name.
My name is Connie Dobreva, and I'm here just to introduce the applicant team. I also helped write the environmental document. So there are a few questions that came up that I'd like to maybe answer and hear what you'd like to hear when we have an official public hearing. We've definitely taken into account the landscape comments, the questions that you have. So when we do a presentation, we'll clarify all those things for you. We do have our specific plan and architect here, so we can show you some examples of, what's the difference between the alley loaded and what's being proposed. I think the first thing is the specific plan was amended not just to meet market conditions, but to really make it developable and to make it easy to use. For example, the development standards were a bunch of sentences, right? So if somebody was opening it up, including your staff, they would have a difficult time understanding what is it that they needed to do. So we made sure we cleaned things up. We clarified which mitigation measures were already done, which ones still needed to be done. So we tried to make it as usable as possible. To answer the question of affordable housing, that's not something that the applicant is proposing, but there's been approximately $20 million of community benefit funds that have been contributed. There's a 2.5 million gallon reservoir that was just completed in conjunction with CPWD, and some pump stations to help fix that water pressure in that entire area, and that's underway, as well as the sand berm. As you see what's out there, there's just sand across all the streets, and that sand berm is failing because it was never maintained. And if you look at the community to the south, they don't have that problem because they maintain that area. So the applicant and CVWD, CVWD has a project right now. They're going to work on one side of the berm, we're going to work on the other. We're going to plant it, water it, and make sure that that berm serves the function it was meant to do, which is to stop all that sand from coming across. The applicant's going to clean up all the streets, and then once it's built, right, they have to maintain it. So it will clean up an existing problem that exists there. And I think finally, to answer the question on the rec center and the park, I think that fell off a long time ago because half of that area is already developed with the rec center for the community association. So what was at some point designated for a city water park, at some point in the 90s when this was constructed, half of it's already gone with the rec center. And this project was plagued by transfer of ownership and bankruptcies over the years, and so a lot of the street infrastructure, the rec center, none of those things were built out, which this applicant will do.
Thank you. Why don't we start with Vice Chair Malakoff? I understand you have questions.
Okay. I'd like to talk to the landscape person.
So we don't have a landscape person here, Juliet, but we can address the landscape for you. We will have somebody for you.
So on page 79. Well, first of all, I want to say,
Before, can you please state your name?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. David DiRienzo, Urban West. I'm the applicant's development representative.
And then Vice Chair, if you could move your mic a little closer. Thank you.
I'm glad that, this project's being undertaken. I know that there's been some issues up there, but there's some blocks there that are really beautiful and how the trees have grown in and everything. So on page 79, it only requires 15-gallon trees, and you get a good stiff wind and that 15-gallon tree will disappear. So I was wondering whether there could be an assortment of street trees of 2436 also, so that when the project's developed, that you do have some mature canopy trees there that also at the same time will be providing shade.
So we'll be able to address those details in the near future. We hired Herman Design Group. You may be familiar with them. They're quite a large landscape architect design firm based here in the Valley. They are working on a new plan all encompassing for the planning areas, as well as the rec center expansion. They're developing a plant palette that will be, I think, bringing an upgraded, more contemporary palette. As an example, the mesquite. So it's a hybrid mesquite they're talking about.
Speak into the microphone.
Oh, sorry. So do you want me to start over? I can do that.
No, it's okay.
Okay. And so we're working with that development of the palette right now that will, I think, address a lot of your concerns and questions, and we can certainly go into Q&A with our landscape architect.
When will we see that palette?
We can talk about it at the next hearing.
Okay.
I'm not sure what percentage complete it's at this very moment for presentation, but I'll make it a point of discussion.
Yeah, I think it's important to get an assortment of trees, and like Commissioner Lee was saying, you want to get some canopy trees there that will provide some shade as people are walking along. One of the other good things up there is that it's one of the few places where they have benches where people can sit down if you're walking. And when I walk, I can walk up to 2 miles, but I have to sit down at least once or twice. And up there's actually benches and things like that. So the canopy trees will help that. It'll be good to see a palette to make sure that we have a good assortment of trees and that we don't get something like olive trees that cause a mess and things like that. The other question I had were both more environmental questions. They've been discussing development up here for years and years, and how the railroad with the noise and the vibrations, and every few years it seems like there's improvements to how you can mitigate that to people that live near these kinds of noises. And 20 years ago, I don't even think we had double glazed glass, or if we did, I didn't know about it. How are we going to protect the people that are going to live here from the vibrations and the noise of the train?
So we went out and measured the noise from the train and did analysis to the multifamily homes as well as to the nearest single-family homes to make sure that there would not be any impacts. And the recommended mitigation measures include upgraded windows and in some the noise wasn't very high to begin with, and it wasn't over. And the way that the interior noise is mitigated through, they sometimes will have thicker doors, and they'll validate everything once they get to prior to building permit as well. But they will mitigate both vibration and noise, and once they go out and do the rough grading, they'll go out there and validate again for the vibration. So there's
So we'll see that list of mitigations that our Assistant Community Development Director was talking about when they do the consistency finding of what measures you're going to take on noise and vibrations. So no, that'll be good.
Commissioner, if I could just expand on that for a second. So I've developed 2 transit-oriented developments over the last few years, and what we've learned in today's world with materials, design, and other elements, the livability along the railroad tracks is a very positive experience today with all these TOD developments that are evidence of just the success with the materials today. So I think we
So
can address it.
you're saying that living next to the railroad tracks is a positive experience?
Oh, in our communities, they have been very positive. They're award-winning communities. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
The last question I have is, so blow sand is not unique to this area. There's a part of Rancho Mirage that just gets covered in blow sand over by their Walgreens. Another area in Cathedral City is over by the Arco AMPM that has a huge problem with the blow sand. In the residential areas, it's become more of an issue because it blows into people's houses and then it gets into the rafters. And we've had cases where people had to have roof repair or rafter repair because the blow sand would blow in there and it would cause problems for the house. So is there some kind of, there was a blow sand mitigation plan, and again, that was probably about 20 years old. Has that been updated to prevent people from, having the effects of blow sand? I mean, I live south of Ramon, and it's been very windy, and I've had piles of sand just, inside my front door, and I don't live in a wind zone.
So the answer is yes. It's been updated. We engaged a large national firm called RWDI, and they did a 3-month study. They're specialists in blow sand and blowing snow. So different environments, but all the same. They did a analysis and put together a mitigation plan. I'm not sure if it's incorporated or not, but there are a couple things. One is we have an initial plan of attack, which is to go out and remove all the excess blow sand along Landau, Silverado, over where the multifamily area is, and then grade that out and then create a stockpile. And then on the berm on the west end, we have to go in and literally cut that berm, reshape it, and haul off all of the accumulated blow sand there. Once that's completed, and we're ready to do this, the stockpile, they'll have that where it'll be used for later fill. The plan immediately, though, with RWDI is once the grading occurs, we'll then do a configuration of the site topography so that it kind of berms up and then creates a catch-all, and then it'll have I hate to use the term elastomeric coating. It's a coating of that polymer that will tamp the sand down. That's immediate. But long-term, it's creating a robust maintenance program through the HOA. This community, as was described earlier, it's gone through multiple ownerships of developers that have gone into bankruptcy. The HOA suffered, the community suffered. New ownership has come in the last 12 months. We're investing a tremendous amount of money, completed the reservoir, the well pumps are going in, this blow sand mitigation. So part of that is leading the HOA into a robust maintenance program ongoing. And so part of that mitigation plan is every 6 months to go up and down that maintenance road that we're going to develop between the berm and then the first row of housing, and then there'll be a north boundary as well. So,
Well, it'll be good to know that, you know, it's being looked at and that the HOA will have some standards. There's a difference between the Walgreens on Bob Hope and Dinah Shore, them having to hire somebody to go dig out of the sand, and the people that live here having to do the same. So it's good that you're addressing it both by robust maintenance and by physically having barriers that would prevent the blow sand. Is there anything that can be, is the person that is doing the architecture here, or?
well, we have the Julia from WHA Architects.
The question I have with the blow sand and the architecture is, you have to have certain openings in the facade of the house, but that's also where the sand gets in. So is there anything, you can do to mitigate that with a filter that still lets the air flow or something so that the sand doesn't get into the homes?
And if you could please start with your name and.
Sure.
Thank you.
Julia Melissos.
Sorry.
I'm actually a planner at WHA, William Hasmahal Architects. We are architects and planners. I'm specifically not an actual architect, but what I can tell you is that the latest codes, the building codes are very big on air quality, indoor air quality. So that's absolutely taken into consideration with the air filters. As we talked about, the different coatings, the windows, the doors, all of those types of elements for energy efficiency, but as well as indoor air quality. So that's really where they can address those types of issues.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just the last thing I'll say before I turn it back to our esteemed chair is that, dovetailing on Commissioner Lee talking about the canopy trees, that when we do see that palette, that those canopy trees are really important to the immediate character of the area rather than, oh, well, this is going to look great in 10 years. This will look great in 5 years. If you do that mix of trees now, then you have people saying, look what they did. It looks great now. We're not going to wait for it to grow in.
Right.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'd love to see that list of those 5 trees that were highly recommended. So that would be great too, of Herman Design Group, which I can't imagine they don't know already. But if you have that list, that would be fantastic to see, because we'd absolutely
I think it's right
include
there.
that in. There you go. There.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Of course. Thank you. Commissioner Thompson, any questions for the applicant? No? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lee, do you? Yeah. Oh, seriously?
Seriously.
Oh. Okay. Wow. Okay, well, thank you, guys. Anybody else from the public that would like to speak on this item?
We have no other speakers.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further public comment, I will close public comments at this time. Oh, actually, yes, I'll close public comments. There's no action item for us today, right?
Right.
Correct, there's no action item. We'll take this input and work with the applicant to make any changes that may be needed to be made to the specific plan document, so that when it comes before the Planning Commission, we've incorporated some of the items that were discussed, or we can clarify in the report.
Okay. Well, I'm going to open up commissioners' comments in a moment, and I have a sneaking suspicion there might be more for you to incorporate.
Okay.
Okay. All right, moving on to item 4 on the agenda, commissioners' comments. Would anybody like to discuss the matter?
Will the council also have a study session?
I don't know.
No, we haven't scheduled a discussion. I did want to add that, as indicated in the staff report, in working with the applicant, we do have a really facilitated, expedited hearing schedule. We've been working with the applicant for almost a year on the project, and so we do have a public hearing before the Planning Commission scheduled for May 1st, so you'll be getting packets by the end of this week to move forward with the hearing next week. And then it'll be scheduled for the City Council subsequent to that on May 8th.
Is it already scheduled with the city council or not yet?
We have scheduled it. We understood it was a risk to notice for both hearings. So, we do have a public hearing before the Planning Commission. Planning Commission is going to be seeing all the materials, and so the commission at that point may have, in that discussion, may be ready to make a motion or may not be ready to make a motion. We understand that, but we have scheduled it for City Council in the event that it can move forward to City Council.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just want to say, I appreciate all the comments and questions from my fellow commissioners, and it's kind of an odd situation to find ourselves in because we're just discussing it today and not necessarily voting on anything. But I'll be interested to see what the more detailed plans look like as things come from the applicant, and I look forward to it. Commissioner Lee?
Yeah, I'm enthusiastic to see anything built in the city that's going to improve our housing. I'm disappointed when it doesn't affect our RENA numbers, when I don't see any movement again on affordable housing. And I don't know how we're going to encourage developers to actually do that. We need some incentives or programs that will encourage them to take that up. So nonetheless, this whole development has been so long in the making. I'm just glad to see it moving forward. I think what's there already is interesting, but I'm looking forward to seeing the track maps. Now, I'm assuming the track maps for all the outstanding 800 units will be given to us?
Yes, in the packet that the commission gets, we'll have the tentative track map so you can see the individual lots of record. It will have the tentative track map for the multifamily. We'll have some concept renderings for potential architecture for the commission's reference. Under the specific plan, the particular site development standards is reviewed at the permit stage. So we can discuss some of that some more next week as well.
Right. So we'll see the track maps. We'll approve or we'll discuss this next week.
Right.
And that will be our last involvement, I believe.
If the commission takes an action to make a recommendation to the city council, then it would be.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm glad to wait for it.
The recommendation is on the specific plan amendment and the track maps? Or, sorry, just want to make sure.
Yes. And thank you for that question, Chair Daley. So what will come before the Planning Commission and what we notice is for the commission to make a recommendation on the proposed specific plan amendment and the tentative track maps for the build out of the residential project. Yeah.
Thank you. Gentlemen?
Let me unmute. Okay. You're
I
good.
muted myself, I apologize. I just have one comment. We have, over my tenure on the commission, I have reviewed several large packages. My respect for all of you that put this package together and have reviewed it and edited it. You have gained miles of respect in my eyes for doing this. For me, it was a sleep aid, I have to admit it. But thank you for the hard work that you put into this and bringing it forward for us.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to item 5, the city attorney report. I don't think we have that. City attorney's not here, right?
No,
Okay.
she's not in attendance today.
All right, and then item 6, city planner report.
No report this evening.
Do we, just a question. So we have Dom as the new associate planner, and do we have any other people that we haven't met yet?
Have you met Cynthia Schultz?
Oh, wait,
The
we
one
did
that was
it
out
last-
on parental leave?
She made a presentation two
Yes.
meetings ago.
So Dom and Cynthia are our two newest planners. They're associate planners with the city, and they have filled out the balance of our planning division.
And you still have Manny Rocha?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, at the ripe old time of 7:15 PM, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.